Well, this episode is a little bit different, but in episode 758, we're going to talk about how to use pop culture to teach writing skills. Yes, you can take things from today's modern world, as is appropriate for your school, and use it to teach writing. So don't let the zombies scare you off. It might just encourage students to write. Teachers, do you have a Donors Choose project? Are you seeking funding? Today's sponsor, Advancement Courses, is donating 10% of the proceeds from their courses to help fund projects like yours. Stay tuned at the end of the show and learn how you can submit your courses for funding consideration.
Welcome to the 10-Minute Teacher Podcast, hosted by author, educator, speaker, and mom, the Cool Cat teacher, Vicki Davis.
Today, we're talking with Nancy Barile. Now, she has a lot of credits to her name. 2007, she was a member of the USA Today All-Teacher Team. 2011, awarded the Massachusetts Commonwealth Award in Creative Leadership. And in 2015, she was a top 50 finalist for the Global Teacher Prize. And there's a lot more things that we could say about you, Nancy. But I'm saying this because we're going to have a conversation about something that may be a little off center for some folks, because Nancy has created a very creative way to teach language arts. Now, I do want to say, Nancy, up front, I'm not a zombie fan and I do not watch this particular show that you watch, but we can apply this to any type of, whether it's pop culture, any type of entertainment. So tell us about your course, what you do with it, and sort of how it works.
Okay, so about 5 or 6 years ago, I had a student in my class named Jordan, and Jordan was so obsessed with The Walking Dead that he used to even wear the leather jacket with the wings of one of the characters on the show. And he would always ask me if I watched the show, and I would tell him, no, Jordan, I'm not into blood and guts and gore. And he said, well, you know, Barile, it has all that stuff that you like in it. You know, it has symbolism and great plot development and characterization and allegory and paradox. And, you know, I was kind of still not, I wasn't into it. So I could engage Jordan in class, but when he had to do anything at home, he wouldn't do it. And around Thanksgiving, his grades started to tank. And so I pulled him aside and I said, Jordan, what do I need to do to get you to do your work at home? And he said, you know what, Barile, I'll make you a deal. If you watch The Walking Dead, I'll do my work. And so, some people would say, don't make deals with your kids, but I thought it was kind of cool that he felt comfortable enough to, issue the challenge. So I said, okay. So over Thanksgiving break, I started watching, and it took me about 5 tries to get through the first episode because it's just so crazy. But by the end of winter break, I had watched all 6 seasons, and Jordan was right. It did have all those things that I liked in it. And what was happening in my sophomore class was that we would come in the next day after the show aired on Sunday night, and we would have these incredibly deep conversations about the show that hit all the elements of fiction and things that I wanted students, the critical thinking and problem solving that I wanted my students to have. And so Jordan said, we should have a class on The Walking Dead. And I said, you know what? You're right. Because if kids are our business, we should try to meet them where they live. And so I went to my director, who's a fan of the show, Christina Porter, and she said if I was willing to make the curriculum, then go for it. So I had Jordan as my consultant and my 15-year-old nephew, and I created a curriculum for it. And I was, I was a little worried if anybody was going to sign up, but the first year over 80 kids did, and they had to create 2 sections of it. So it's been a really great platform for not only teaching kids how to be better readers and writers and observers of media, but also we've been able to look at things like business and ethics and negotiation and sociology and psychology and even international relations. And so it's been really fun to give kids a little taste of some things that they don't normally learn in high school. So, for example, one of their final assignments is they look at international relations theory and they apply it to the show. And you wouldn't normally get that in high school, but they love it. And what I found was, kids turning in papers days early and 5 to 10 pages over the minimum requirement, and, that didn't ever really happen in class. So it was really fun.
Tell us the name of the class.
The name of the class is, and forgive me, Digesting the Walking Dead.
Yes, and it is a language arts class, right?
It is a language arts class. That is what it's rooted in. There's a lot of writing in it, and there's a lot of reading. So, for example, one of the things we do is we examine whether torture is ever justified, and the students do a little research on that, and then they apply it to the show. And that became very important when, in the 2016 election, when Donald Trump wanted to bring back torture, my kids actually knew a great deal about the topic and were able to speak very intelligently about it. So we do a lot of really cool things. And so last year, through some wild set of circumstances, we were able to have John Bernthal, who is the character of Shane, come and speak to the kids via Zoom. And, he is an A-list movie star now. He was only on the show for a few seasons and then he was killed off. I hope I'm not giving any spoilers here, but he took the time to speak to my students via Zoom for over an hour. And when I tell you, and I told him this, he gave me enough street cred as a teacher in my school to carry me straight through to retirement. I have kids. I live in the town where I teach, and I have kids that I'd never taught that stop me on the street and say things. You're that teacher that got, Shane or the Punisher to come and talk to our class, So, it's given me a little bit of cachet that's always nice to have as an educator.
Yeah, it is. So let me ask you this. Have you gotten any parent pushback? Do they wish that you would use another particular show?
No, I don't. And every student that takes the course, it's only offered to juniors and seniors. And every parent has to sign off on a permission slip, that pretty clearly articulated what the kids will see in the show. And so I have some kids that are huge fans of the show and have seen it 15 times, but then I have kids that have never seen the show as well. So I have not gotten any parent pushback, but I'm also very lucky. My school is a school where they allow teachers to create their own electives. And, we've had an elective on Breaking Bad. We've had electives on other shows. My kids want a Game of Thrones one, but I think it's really interesting that you can use these shows as platforms for learning and engaging students, where a student may not have been interested in maybe more traditional learning. They thrive in this kind of environment. The kids do really well. And it's sort of the perfect thing for a pandemic because it's like you have to know some survival skills and so it's a lot of fun to teach. It really is.
So let's think about you've mentioned some, and, I haven't been able to make it through even one episode of The Walking Dead. I'm just going to tell you, I had a child who, after he got to college, he got into it and I just couldn't do it. I have nightmares. I'm just not me. But let's say, okay, what other types of shows maybe that don't have the gore and such do you think would make a great course? Have you thought about that?
I haven't, because I've sort of, The Walking Dead was kind of my thing. I don't think I want to go out and build another curriculum. It's very intensive and time intensive and everything. But for other teachers, there are a lot of shows that kids watch. And even a show, there's different series that are on. Like, my husband always says, why don't you do the Game of Thrones? There's so much on Game of Thrones that you could do. But I think that there's plenty of things out there that kids would want to watch. My advice would be to ask the kids, ask the students, what would you like a class on? Because I certainly would have never launched a class on The Walking Dead if not for one of my students suggesting it. So I would say, talk to the students. One of the teachers in my school does a Black Lit Matters class that the kids really love, where they read literature by Black authors and poetry and do an exploration there. And that's a really successful class. And so we send out questionnaires to the students and ask them what they want. We have a class on hip hop, the evolution of hip hop and things like that. So I think, it's not, the teacher really shouldn't sit around thinking what they should make. I think the students should tell the teachers what they want, and then the teachers should go from there.
So your school obviously sees benefit for creating these courses around pop culture. What kind of benefits are you seeing with your students, in particular with writing?
With writing, it has been incredible because, students are turning in papers earlier and with more writing, the critical thinking that goes on, the analysis is unbelievable. And then with the pandemic, I know a lot of people think kids lost a year of learning, and I beg to differ with that, especially with regard to high school kids. Now, I don't know about the little ones as much. I teach high school, but I never used Google Classroom before the pandemic. But of course, I had to, get up to speed on it very quickly because of remote learning. And so Google Classroom gives you the ability to look at a student's writing in progress. And that has been enormously helpful in improving student writing in my classroom. In fact, I have never seen writing as good as it is right now from my students who are able to revise and edit their work and add and subtract things. And it has just really been phenomenal to see them do the thinking process online. That's a skill that my students in my district did not get until they went to college. So that's been a huge benefit of remote learning. Also, when kids are really interested in a subject and they want to argue with you on a topic, is Shane inherently evil? Or should Lori have had an affair with Shane? They get really powered up to share their opinions. So I try to feed that, so that they get excited about learning. And then also, providing evidence. It's been a huge vocabulary builder in my class. Many of my students are English learners, and so the show helps them improve their vocabulary. And so that's been really great. So it's just been an enormous win all the way around. I really can't think of anything that's, been a problem.
Well, this is a fascinating topic, and it's one of those, Nancy, that I still have to get my arms around. Just, I don't know, TV is just so, I guess, different. But in some ways, I think about Jane Eyre and some of the other novels I grew up reading, and a lot of the same things happen in the TV shows that happened in those novels. So it's not like, our literature hasn't been full of lots of interesting things for many, many years. But this is fascinating. I think it's interesting because you're relating to kids where they are. You're taking what they are passionate about. And it's important when we teach writing or anything that we do relate to kids and what they are interested in. I had students write their own books this year, and many wrote about video games and things that they loved. And they did write a lot. Kids who don't usually write wrote a lot because it was what interested them. So I applaud you, Nancy, for engaging with the student, for doing what it took to get that child to read. And then you've also got a great innovation that a lot of kids are packing in and starting to learn to write using. So thank you so much for this. And where can people go to find more about this course?
There's actually a Huffington Post article about it and a Guardian article about it. If you just Google my name, Nancy Barile, and type in Walking Dead, there's a lot about it. I posted on my Twitter and Instagram accounts, which are my name, when, Shane was on. And, there's also a YouTube Ed Talk about it that I did with our 5-district partnership that really breaks it down and talks about more of the lessons and the things that the students do in the class. And so it's been really great. And one thing about the show, as far as race and gender goes, it's very diverse, and exploring things like, doing a feminist criticism on the show or looking at male narratives in the show has been really powerful for my students. And it's changed the way they look at TV, where now they say, "Oh, Barile, you ruined me. I can't even watch a commercial now without trying to analyze it and see, what is it saying about race and gender and things like that." So, and I'm like, yes, my job here is done.
Nancy Barile, and she has lots of awards, as we've said. She's also the author of I'm Not Holding Your Coat, My Bruises, a memoir of punk rock rebellion.
Yeah.
So you're a punk rocker?
So yes, that's how I came up in the late 70s and early 80s. I was, very heavily involved in that scene, and I had no musical talent. So I worked behind the scenes as a promoter and a band manager and a writer. And when I became a teacher, and, I won a couple of those awards that you mentioned, people would always ask me, what makes you a good teacher? And when I really thought deeply about it, I realized how much I drew on those punk rock roots. It was punk rock that helped me connect to my alienated and marginalized students, because that's how I felt when I was growing up. It was punk rock that gave me that do-it-yourself work ethic that enabled me to raise money and help get my students get resources that they need, and to knock down doors that were closed to them and provide opportunities to them. That all came from punk rock. And, the whole question authority and the whole creating lesson plans that asked students to analyze a wide array of information and become independent thinkers. That all came from punk rock. So I was like, wow, this really impacted me, even though, I haven't been involved in the scene for over 40 years.
Yeah.
There was some really good life lessons that I took with me and that I use every day in my classroom. And so, there's a lot of power in that.
Fascinating. Well, thank you for coming on the show, Nancy, and digesting The Walking Dead. I've got a lot to digest after this episode so that I can just process, but we see it all the time. After over 700 episodes, the teachers that can culturally relate and work with their administration to do that are the ones that get great results. So thanks, Nancy.
Thank you so much for having me, Vicki. I really appreciate it.
Teachers, tell everyone you know to submit their Donors Choose projects to coolcatteacher.com/give between August 18th and September 24th, 2021, and you might be chosen to have your projects funded. Since 2015, Advancement Courses has been donating 10% of their proceeds during this time of the year to support Donors Choose projects. Check out Advancement Courses for your professional development, like I've been doing this summer. So go to coolcatteacher.com/give to submit your Donors Choose project. And if you need some awesome PD, 10-Minute Teacher listeners get 20% off any of their courses with the code COOL20. With this coupon, a 3 grad credit course for continuing education, salary advancement, or recertification is only $359. So go to advancementcourses.com/coolcat to learn more and use the code COOL20. Never stop learning.
If you enjoyed today's 10-Minute Teacher podcast, why not subscribe on iTunes? You can also catch up with Vicki on Twitter at CoolCatTeacher, or level up and learn with her blogs and free resources at coolcatteacher.com. Thanks for listening.